Okay, well, it's an opportunity for you to ask some questions from the presentations we've heard this morning, or any of the other issues you want to talk about. Maybe I can just start off whilst you're thinking about who's going to be the first one to ask a question. We talk a lot about data and about how the data is going to help you as an organisation deliver more value to your organisation itself. Where's the balance between the help it gives to the customer and the intrusiveness that the customer feels when you are very much aware of things which they don't necessarily want you to be aware of? Where's the balance for you as an organisation? Do you start with Helen?
Yeah, sure. I mean, actually it goes a bit further than that, because we found quite early on actually that, you've told me something that I didn't know, but my husband also didn't know, or my wife didn't know. And actually, so you need to very, very strongly set the parameters at the start, and ask people what it is that they want to know, and allow them to very quickly say, I'm not interested. So we have a pop-up on the B app. As soon as you kind of log in, it'll give you a piece of information. It might tell you something about you or generically, and it allows you to just click on that, cross not interested, and then we won't do that again. And the customer knows that. So I think it's really, really important to set those parameters. I think across other products, again, customers recognize that you know more about them than actually some know themselves. And again, people can get very angry with that. So you have to really get the license to use that data and that information to help
The element
them.
of permission that's so important. The trouble is are you taking the permission on an individual basis or just a general permission? Because they aren't necessarily aware of some of the benefits, but they don't necessarily like some of the disadvantages that come.
We actually have is that if you go back in time, people were encouraged to tick the box that said, don't get any marketing rubbish, and actually that's dictated, to the kind of future use that we're not allowed to talk to them about that. So we've been trying to unlock a lot of that permission with the customer. So it can be difficult, but our digital next best action approach allows us to look at one customer at a time, which is quite unique.
Thanks.
And I think that's not exactly the next stage. So your question in terms of individual, actually, that should be your next stage, because we are working still on segments and micro segments. But actually where you want to go is into individualization and personalization. And coming back to the permission point, yes, we captured a lot of these permissions from the outset. I think it is about trying to find ways in your engagement that you empower customers and that they could take control and change their permissions, whether it's on the mobile or the app. And that empowerment is something we often in the industry still push things in a way. By having the right engagement and empowerment in place for your customers, actually you don't have to, in a way, cross-sell anymore. You will cross-buy, because customers will come in and buy what they want based on what they told you. But that's the next leap.
I mean, but that's quite. You mentioned quite an interesting issue there, which goes back to some of the things Tom was talking about earlier on. Banks for years have been trying to sell things. You push. You used to be able to walk into a branch, and the challenge was, can you get from the door to the teller and back out again without somebody pinning to the wall trying to sell you something which you'd never thought you ever wanted? And trying to move from a sales culture to a buying culture is actually quite a challenge for an industry that's got used to selling for so much time. And a lot of the incentive schemes support that.
Yeah.
Tom, you talked about you not want to do all of that selling. You are already focused much more on the other end of the spectrum in terms of what you want customers, how do you want them to interact with you, yes?
Yeah, I think we are right now trying to, and hopefully for the rest of the life of the company, be genuinely useful and try to identify the customer problems that we're best placed to solve. So it just really, and this is selfish to an extent, right? Like, I don't want my bank to, I hear this example a lot, often at banking conferences, where you're walking down the road at lunchtime and you go past a pizza restaurant and your bank's app buzzes and say, hey, why don't you eat pizza? It's like, what the hell? Like, this is intrusive and annoying, and not, you have to ask in that interaction, who's benefiting there? Is a consumer really benefiting, or is a bank benefiting? And so I think if you're always in the mindset of like, we want to solve customer problems. Like, we're genuinely trying to help the customer. You will occasionally get it wrong, and I think absolutely, like, permissioning is right and being able to tailor it personally is right. But it's not a sort of, oh yeah, we've got the tick box so we can send you marketing kind of permissioning. And it's like, genuinely, what level of engagement interaction do you want with your bank? So for me, like, a thing Monzo does that I find really useful is when I arrive in a new country, Monzo says, welcome to New York or welcome to Delhi. Here's your exchange rate. There are no fees or charges. And for me, then perhaps a useful thing is, oh, we notice you forgot to get travel insurance, and normally you wouldn't be able to buy it because you're already in country, but we know you're still literally on the plane, and so you've got, do you want a last-minute travel insurance for £5? Sure, I do, yeah, thanks a lot. I think, for me, that feels useful. It might not feel useful for some users, and they'll be able to turn that off. But I think genuinely trying to solve customer problems is a good starting point, and then listening to feedback.
Yeah. Let me see if we've got some questions out of the audience. Let's go one here at the front or in the middle. All right, 1 second with a mic.
Thank you. My name is Laura Malone. I actually work for Macmillan. We've done a lot of work, obviously, with lots of banks across the sector on how we can ensure that customer experience is beneficial for people affected by cancer, and really trying to highlight the issue of the financial difficulty that a diagnosis of cancer can bring. So I guess my question is, looking at customer experience rather than customer service and how you build that trust, you know, where do you see the way that you deal with the difficult questions when customers are in those difficulties as being demonstrative of how you build that trust and how you build that engagement, rather than maybe the more exciting end of you know, engaging with those customers?
Shall I take that one? So we've spent a lot. I run a function that actually handles complaints as well as doing the pretty stuff, because we think that informs us really about what we should be doing with customers. And we have a huge amount of vulnerability across our organisation, from everything from illness to bereavement to financial difficulty, etc. And what we needed to do, it was very obvious a couple of years ago that we needed to reinvest a lot of time with frontline staff in actually understanding and being able to sense vulnerability when it wasn't always obvious. I think it takes a lot of training, it takes a lot of coaching, but you constantly need to kind of review those experiences. The issue you have as well is that you can't label individuals, and everybody can come in and out of vulnerability at any stage. And that's really, really difficult to be able to identify. So it does take quite a unique skill set. I mean, when I go and listen to calls from the couple of hundred complaint handlers we have and the people who are centred around vulnerability, I'm just overwhelmed how they deal with it. And I think the responses I get, the letters I get from customers who've been in very difficult situations, either through illness or financial difficulty, it tells us an awful lot, because we can't go to those customers and say, oh, you know, how was your experience? We've just got to learn intuitively. It's very, very difficult. And we've been working with groups like yours, actually, to understand how we can better provide that support, because you know, the work that you do is phenomenal, and we don't have that kind of training. So we've been bringing in other organisations to help train our people. It's very hard.
How does that work within, I mean, the face-to-face world is an easier environment in which to do it. If you're not dealing face to face, but you're dealing through a piece of technology, that's a bigger challenge.
So I think the key is in those kind of situations, I think a human interaction is absolutely vital. And you know, whether it's like a huge loss to fraud, or it's financial difficulty, or it's bereavement or illness, I think the human touch is absolutely vital. And I think it's a false assumption to say that because there's a piece of technology in between you, that it's not human anymore. I think trying to automate away that stuff is very wrong, but I think a text chat interaction for some people is as personal as a face-to-face one, or a phone call. So that we have a 24/7 support line, and we've actually just had a guy start to sort of run the whole financial difficulties and vulnerable customers sort of segment and train the team. But for me, it's the personal interaction there, and absolutely compassion and training, and it's very, very tricky. I don't think it's something that you should try and automate away with technology at all.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the power of, if you like, technology and people. You know, I think of, I don't know how many people here have experienced USAA in the States. But as an organisation, the ability to use, because all of it is done globally through technology and call centres, but they have the highest net promoter score of any any organisation anywhere. You know, they outperform whatever you think of some of the other great brands like Apple. They're in another league completely. But that is about the same sort of issues you've raised, and they've managed to do that in financial services hugely successfully.
What's the name of this organization?
USAA, based in San Antonio in Texas. An absolutely brilliant, I visited there a number of years ago, and their experience of dealing with customers is magical.
Can I comment perhaps on the post office as well, what we do in that space? Because social purpose is for us at the heart. We've got less problems on the social purpose than on the commercial purpose sometimes, but we try to bring that in balance. We have kind of a model which we call hub and spoke, where sometimes some specialism has to be centralized, like mortgage advisors and so on, but nevertheless, you have entry points, and these are your spokes. And at the end of those spokes, it's probably our branches and our network as such. But we now have 400 people, we call them CRMs, customer relationship managers, are 400 of those spokes. There's many more. And of course they have these conversations because they know we are there for the community in the post office. You know, we are often the last shop, bank, lender in town. So we then capture this through technology as well. So we have tablets out there, which then are centralized. And if it comes to specialists, then as well we have, we've got Salesforce as a system, but that's another way of
no
then,
need to apologize.
yes, okay. Where we then use that technology then to understand better customers' data and come back to customers and so on. So that's how we just get the local human touch into the more digitized world.
Okay. Right, let's go for another question here. Sorry, I know we had one at the back. I'll come back to you in a second. One at the front here, first of all. Mike's coming.
Anthony Elliott, the Fair Banking Foundation. Very briefly, I spoke yesterday, and in our view, I think the B account at present is the current account without overdraft that has the most features to help customers manage their money. That would be my view. I have two questions. One of them possibly aimed at the B account, and picking up on something you said in your presentation about your inclination towards Apple. Is the B account designed for all devices, for anybody to access it anyway? I know it's very difficult to pull that off, but I'd be interested in your thoughts on how people can engage and whether they can engage in all contexts. And my second question is, the banking industry at the moment will say that through the switching service, it's very easy to switch. But there are instances where it goes wrong still. There's certainly some banks that are very quick to pay compensation to customers who find the switching service doesn't go that smoothly, really. And clearly for two of you, certainly, I think it's quite relevant as to how good the switching service is, really. And I'd be interested in your comments on that.
Okay, I'll pick up the first part of that. So the B app will work on about 80% of devices at the moment. We hope to launch in the new year actually its own kind of digital banking site, so it doesn't have its own at the moment. So it has its own B site, but you can't actually operate your account on there. You can, however, operate your accounts on our digital banking site for Clydesdale and Yorkshire, but that's to come. So pretty confident about its ability to stretch across device. Sorry, your second part of the question.
Switching.
Yeah, so switching. One of the things that we've been looking at in the past, actually, and particularly with B, is I'm not that worried if you want to kind of switch in your whole relationship to B to begin with. I'm quite happy for you to get in, try it, use it, test it, see how it works for you. Because of the amount of features on it, it does really work best when you're doing the majority of your primary banking on there, and obviously that's the intention of it, to kind of really address every which way. But actually, we're encouraging people to come in quickly. You can apply for a B app in 11 minutes. You can get it up and running that quickly. And I'm actually really encouraging people to come in, try it, test it. We're even looking for a way of a much slicker approach to getting through without credit checking you, without IDVing you, all of the things that actually kind of slow that process down so that you can test it. But I'm absolutely with you. I think there's a huge amount of inertia still to current account switching. I've never used the service. Mind you, I have a counsel with every bank to see what they're doing. And I make no excuse for that. But I'm with you. When you talk to customers, they say, oh, I need my mortgage to go out on Friday. And, they just don't trust it yet. And despite the millions that has been spent on encouraging people to do it and giving them cast iron guarantees, they don't want to. And I personally think that's fine.
The switching service is part of it the KYC, the difficulty of it. When you're going to be into an environment like ING where a selfie and a copy of your passport is sufficient to open the account. How close are post office and cyborg to that environment?
Well, I'm actually more interested in competing on the customer experiences rather than current account business. So we are not really in the current account business. We have a very small base, and we're not actually investing in this. I mean, we all know where the future is going. Open banking architecture, PSD2. So the competition is what you're gonna. It's going to be played out in a field where you're going to make a difference to customers on the basis of what information you're going to aggregate and make a difference. So the planners, the budget planners, and all that we're working from. I think that's more where I think, and actually, regardless, it's like blockchain, isn't it? It's the pipes underneath. Whichever current account it's going to be on. As an organisation, we have no current account really. I'm not really interested. I leave that legacy and overhead to colleagues in the room. And I think I have a background. I'm sorry that the bio wasn't sent because I'm a bit of a last minute. But I ran egg banking. In 2000 and before that, we said we are going to revolutionise the customer experience in financial services already then. And our challenge was, how can you have the relationship with a customer without having a current account? And I think we're back here, and technology will be there now to do this.
I completely support that. I mean, that's why we invested so much money in current account opening process online. And it was slightly easier for us because we were starting from scratch, and we built this separate platform to allow us to do it. But our aim was, to open it in 10 minutes at home or on the bus or wherever you were. And as long as what you tell us is true, we can find you, we can identify you, and away you go. I make no, we do find customers who, they've not lived at the address long enough, or students can be difficult, or people in shared accommodation, etc. And at that point, we need them to call us. I hope in the future we can get much better at that, and with technology help, we can use digital signature, which we do now, but also be able to scan a copy of your passport and those type of things, because it's all about the customer experience. Make it quick and easy for me to do it, or I'll leave you and I'll never come back, and we recognise that.
Sorry, we have one in the middle down the... That's right. Lady at the back there, first of all, then we go to the gentleman at the back on the left-hand side.
Sanaz Yeganefat from IBM Emerging Technologies. So my question is about...
Can't hear you.
So keep the microphone a little closer.
Okay,
thanks.
hello.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Sanaz Yeganefat from IBM Emerging Technologies. My question is mainly for Helen and Tom, but I'm happy to get the answer from anyone. It's around data again. So how willing have your customers been in sharing their data? Especially with Open Bank coming, we've heard over the last 2 days one of the barriers might be the customers not be willing to share their data. And my impression from the B platform is that the benefit would be when a customer is willing to have, let's say, for example, a credit card, a current account and a mortgage on the same platform, so you could actually have the software could provide a capability by looking at the entire customer portfolio and not just their current account. So have you found that your customers are willing to share their data? And also, were you surprised? Because I'm assuming before you started, let's say the B platform, for instance, or Monzo, you did market research and you expected, for example, this particular demographic to be willing to share, and then later on you found that they're not. So I'm interested to know the experience.
So, taking a step back, fundamentally, I believe that customers' data belongs to them, and I think that customers should choose, like explicitly opt in to share it and understand why they're sharing it, and refuse that permission if they want. As a result, we ask for explicit opt-in for all use of the customer data. But I think if you tie it back to, so if you present it as a tick box at the bottom of a sign-up form alongside the we'll sell your data to marketing agencies to spam you for the rest of the time, you're going to get a really bad reaction from customers. On the other hand, if you say, hey, we like your geolocation, and the two reasons we want that is A, so that we can tell you're in a foreign country and welcome you on arrival and give you the foreign exchange with no fees or charges, and B, protect your card from fraud. So we know if you're in London, your card's used in Manchester, that's fraud. That's why we'd like your geolocation. Do you want to share it? Actually, something like 99% of customers opt in. And so, were we surprised? No, absolutely not. I think and our demographic is skews to younger, but our oldest customer is 84 or something. So I think if you connect it back to the reason you're doing it and link it with genuinely solving customer problems, 99% of people are happy to share. The 1% aren't, right? People who work in data security. Actually, we had a bunch of people say, no, I don't want anyone connecting me with my social graph, because then the government's going to track me and my colleagues and hunt us down eventually in their minds. That's fine. The 1% who want to share less can share less.
So if you hold, so if I take my example with B at the moment, I have my mortgage, my savings account, my credit card, my everything with Clydesdale and Yorkshire. So I can see absolutely everything on my B app and use that together. The future for customers is being able to use that type of technology to see all their accounts and drag them all into the B app, and open APIs will allow us to kind of move into that space. We've tested with consumers what that would look like and how they would use that, and we've had a very favourable response. So that's a future opportunity for us. In terms of data, I agree with everything Tom said. When you use their data yourself to be genuinely helpful to them, we don't try and sell products from the B app. We don't push other things to you. We just use your data that you've allowed us to use to tell you things that are genuinely helpful about the way that you're managing your money. It's not an opportunity for us to kind of ram new products down your throat. The future of how customers allow their data to be used is as Tom says, down to them, and it has to be genuinely helpful. But for us, the feedback we receive is that if you use that to be informative, to help me, you know more about me, as I said earlier, than I know myself in some respects. So, but just use that data to be helpful.
Richard, what's the sort of your sort of broader view across the industry? What's your sort of feeling on this particular issue?
Well, I think everything that's been said is true. We have our own sort of version of this challenge, which is if you look at all the personal digital assistants that are out there, sort of Cortana, Siri, and so forth. What these things are doing is they are saying, I want to learn a lot about you, and I need to therefore, and come back with a benefit. Now, some business models of companies in our industry are obviously based on advertising, so they're looking at that data and using it for targeted advertising. And if you sort of speak to my kids, they'll go, well, I don't care, it's useful. I'm glad I'm getting useful advertising as opposed to irrelevant advertising. Other people, it's a problem. Our position on it is that we, with Cortana, which is built into your Windows operating system now, is that we're very clear. We don't use it for advertising. It is a personal digital assistant. We went around and interviewed, PAs and said, what do you do for people? And you've got a sort of a notebook where you can say, I want to know about food and dining and travel and all these sort of different things. And that is sort of very personal to you. But there was a big pushback initially because we were very explicit about the contract and said, this is the privacy, this is what we're taking from you, this is what we're doing. Others were rather more opaque at that time. The industry's moved on. So, it is a challenge for us to find the balance. Our principled approach was very strong and we were very explicit, And people kind of went, ooh, that's a bit more than I think I really want to give. So then you have to earn the trust. Then you have to do as Tom describes, which is actually be clear about the specific benefit.
Okay. We go to the, that's right, the back there with the glasses on.
Thank you. My question to the panel is, we talked a lot about data to improve the customer experience and using the data to redefine the products. My question to the panel is, how is it being used to redefine the bank itself, the traditional thinking, the culture? Have you faced any challenges, or have you found out any specific area where they fundamentally changed the thinking of the bankers using the data itself? So how do you reflect within the bank using this data to change the processes, basically, if that makes sense?
Hank, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think it's an important question. I think this is all about culture to me. And as you engage with your customers, you also have to engage with your own people, and particularly your own management. I think the biggest blockages are probably not in the more technical environments, because we're all well advanced. It's more on senior and top management, where they need to understand the relevance and the investment you need to get there, and that's particularly in the B case as well. When I talked about centers of excellence, and one of them is an analytical center of excellence, which is actually the data one, that came after 6 of 8 months of negotiations, talks, and so on, even to just bring it on a map and to get the governance approved. So I know you probably talked about collaboration and partnerships and so on. I think before you start a partnership on this, a center of excellence or not with partners, external or internal, within your organization, please sort out the legals, the commercials, and the IP, because you're going to be busy for ages before you actually can yield anything out of that. So coming back, I don't know if that's really an answer to your question, but for us it was more like a governance issue, and get backing from top management that data is important, and data analytics, and that we can invest in it, and then approve the governance, and only then we started to yield from it. So it was a lot of ups and downs on that one.
Hello?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had to do a huge amount on data before we could go anywhere near building the B platform, and actually, re-engineer data management right from the start. We had no way of, using anything digital. Next best action was just something of the future. We were still in a world where we were running data and using prompts in the front line for individuals when they talk to customers, and it was a complete mess because it hadn't been invested in. And I think it really was about that cultural change. It was starting with at the top and saying, look, we genuinely need to change our approach to how we, the experience we give to customers, and using data in a way that, clean it up, use it properly, check it's right. Customers are very willing to give you clean data to the bank. I mean, they do it without thinking every day. The respect we need to show them for that is make sure it's accurate and right, and use it in a way that can be genuinely helpful and deliver a different customer experience. But it was a huge investment, and it was a massive cultural change as well.
Tom, I suppose you haven't had that cultural change because actually, starting from scratch made it, theory, a little bit easier.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just a natural part of everything we do, really. I mean, we started with a data team before we launched any product. It's a cultural change. It's a cultural challenge as we bring people who've worked in traditional banks on board, because they are so often people I interview, and we don't necessarily hire, are just super, super focused around product lines. And that's just culturally very, very difficult. We're a 60-person organization, and I believe and I hope that every single person is genuinely focused on the customer problems. And really the financial product comes not even second or third, but way, way down the line. And clearly when you get more than about 1,000 customers, you have to just use data to analyze those customer problems. You can't individually talk to that many customers. So it just becomes central to everything we do. Every new feature or product we launch, we define what we're looking for in terms of data even beforehand. And we have a very, very capable in-house data team now that draws things like product insight, like behavioral insight, fraud detection, credit assessment, all from a massive, massive data warehouse. the challenge we have is when bankers come in, they think about like mortgages or credit cards or fixed term loans rather than like the customer problem. So like go to a bank and try and find the team that's responsible for like welcoming you on arrival to a new country. It's like, it doesn't exist. I mean, I did meet a lady who was responsible for getting you use your credit card internationally because they earned more fees on it. It's like, I don't know, it is natural to us, but when you bring in bankers, there's a conflict. Also with the regulation and the regulators, I think they tend to think in a more traditional way about financial products.
Richard?
Well, I recognise it all because we are, a lot of our competitors are sort of born in the cloud. So, but we actually have had to make a transformation from a sort of an on-premises, if you will, legacy product-centric, pretty siloed, all those sort of things. We've gone through this transformation. We are software as a service. It is all based on the data. It is all based on this instrumentation. And you get more and more new products appearing as a result. Office for years, as everybody knows, was about 4 or 5 products. If you look at Office 365 now, it's about 10 products. And that's because you see, you learn, you can fit a niche and deliver it much more rapidly. For us, that the thing I find I talk to customers the most these days is they say, well, how did you make this transformation? People, process, technology, culture, engineering, pricing, this stuff we've done and come out the other side, reasonably well. So, all of these things are challenges I see every day with banking. So, for sure, culture is important.
All right, time for one more question. Yes?
A lot of the experiences that you've shown today are the fun, nice side of banking. We're talking about helping people to manage their money better, have good experiences, making sure that they're in a better place financially. The reality of most banking business models is you have to say no to people. You turn them down for credit, they say, I'd like a loan to do X or Y or Z, you credit score them, you say no to them. I want to buy a house, I'm really sorry, you can't actually afford that house. So how do you get good customer engagement and really excellent customer experiences when you're actually saying no?
Yeah, shall I start? It's really difficult. I mean, we spent a lot of time thinking about different customer problems, basically, and we still do every day. And for us, it's about, we try never to say no. We try to get you on a path to what you're trying to do, whether it's buying a house, whether it's getting credit, whether it's, paying off debt, etc. And what we've tried to do is to say, in what circumstances would we absolutely have to say no? And then what would we do about that? And what we're finding is that, and it's not so much the B app, this is the kind of bank in general, and again, it's back to that cultural change, is that we work really hard with customers to say, what's the alternative? If I can't give you a mortgage, for example, how long could it take before we got you into a position where you could take a mortgage, or is there an alternative? And it is very difficult, but it is about that experience. It's about understanding the customer, understanding why their credit is poor, and setting them back on a journey. And we spend probably more time in front of the customer doing that than we do actually opening new products.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And selling mortgages isn't something we do, but even account opening. In the last 10 years, I've probably moved 14 times. And as a result, my credit file and my proof of address is a mess. And I've been turned down more times than I can count, signing up for credit cards and bank accounts just to test them out, frankly. And so even the account opening, I can think of probably one situation where you cannot open an account for someone. That's when they're on the sanctions list. If they're genuinely sanctioned by the Treasury. Everyone else you should be able to say yes to. And so if you are an undischarged bankrupt, sure, yes, we can open your account. We're not allowed to give you an overdraft above a certain amount, but yeah, sure, you can have an account. Or if you've got no identity documents, sure, we can give you an account to get you started. And then, how do we mitigate the risk? And so, absolutely, I agree. It's basically being really, really clear about the very few situations where you have to say no, which is basically you're a terrorist. But for most people, 99.99999%, we should be saying yes. And I think, broadly, that's the answer. I think the way the banks approach it is you're not going to be a profitable, because we've got a cost base to support. If you are homeless or unemployed, we don't want to give you a current account because we won't make money off you, because we've got a large cost base to support. So we will say no. It's just not, or a risk and compliance department gets stuck in and says it's not worth our time really trying to make the effort to onboard you here. So no.
Well, luckily, it's a legal requirement now that you have to open a basic bank account for everybody. So, there would never be an occasion where for a current account we would say no. That just would not happen. So you can open a basic bank account. It's when you get into credit and lending that it gets more difficult.
Yeah.
I think there's a sort of an abundance mentality that you can have as well, which is, this person, as you've said, is just doesn't fit or isn't right or isn't profitable or whatever. But obviously people do offload now to Funding Circle and to, this Pocket, if you know that particular offering, which is for people that are generally unbanked. And I think just by sort of saying, we can't do it, but we're going to give you a graceful exit to one of our partners. I think about an experience at Microsoft where somebody came for a job interview and they had a bad experience, and I met them some years later. I wasn't involved in that experience, and they said, you didn't hire me, you dealt with it really badly as a company, and I'm never going to buy your technology, kind of thing. Whereas I think if we'd gone, here's a graceful way of saying no, passing you off to maybe another partner that you might be more suited to, etc., then you're going to end up with, hopefully a better reputation, and it's all about that NPS reputation as well.
I think we shouldn't underestimate the power of financial education, which we haven't really mentioned here, but it's at the heart of our FACE program, as I mentioned it there. Customer needs to be aware of what the benefits are, what the opportunities are, what the choices are, and they can then make an informed choice. In that process, which is just not a very instant, quick, robo, yes, no, I think people are put on a journey, customer journeys, that they might realize themselves that they will get to a no. And this is kind of, why sometimes the face-to-face contact is still quite important, to get that customer on that journey so that actually the customer sees perhaps it's a no. I hope it's we wouldn't say a yes but, a yes and, actually, in terms of the same point you were making. We will partner up in that informed choice, in that kind of suite of possibilities we can offer to you or services to you as a customer. We might have to partner with somebody else who's then going to go subprime or whatever in this case. And it's up to us to select these partners. But I think the customer needs to be put on that journey, in that conversation, before you then offer up these choices. It's a more lengthy process than just a robo yes-no.
I'm sure actually the debate on this could continue for some considerable time, which is a reflection not only of the subject matter we're talking about this morning, but also the quality of the presentations from our speakers as well. So time for us to break for coffee, but beforehand perhaps we put our hands together and thank all four of them for their contribution.